when they join Celsius. So it's easy for me to act in my own best interest. But we also wanted to be inclusive and make sure that we bring the next 100 million people into crypto. And again, we're not trying to bring the not your keys, not your coin guys. They have their own solutions. They're comfortable doing their own farming. Great. Good job, guys. We're trying to bring the people who are not comfortable managing their keys, who are not comfortable with DeFi, who don't know if they need to buy a tractor when they need to do farming, right? So the point for us was that inclusion, look, crypto is only 15% women, right? So look at our management team, 50% women. Look at our company, 50% women, right? So you cannot do a revolution and exclude half of the population. So it goes down deep into what are the principles of the company? How are you going to bring the person that has only $100, right? And so, for example, our onboarding, we give you $20 if you deposit $200 or less, right? Or more, sorry. So we're trying to make the incentives work for the person who barely has a few $100s to their name. And they can benefit from compounding. They can benefit from the increase in the value of the asset, right? And they can really achieve financial independence, which most of them they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't participate in Tesla going up 4,000%, right? So how do you include those people back to be participants in the American dream, in financial independence, in being able to get your kids through college or reach retirement? These are the goals. For us, success is having as many of our users reach those goals. It's not about Cell Token is the best performing asset in crypto. It's about how many of our users participated in that appreciation. I can tell you that almost every one of our users has Cell Token. So they did participate in that appreciation. So that's how I measure success, right? Are the people on the bus with me benefiting just as much as I am, or am I that, typical Wall Street executive who gets to keep 90% of the value?
Right. And you actually post the top 200 hodlers list on your website. You're currently at the top 51,000 and change Cell Tokens valued, as you said, at over $106 million.
And 62 of those people are already millionaires. And I can tell you, because I know a lot of them, they were not millionaires when they joined Celsius. So even though our goal is not to mint millionaires, our goal is financial independence and financial retirement. These are people that write me every day and say, I now can get my kids through college. I now know how I'm going to finish the month. I paid all my high credit card debt, and I'm now saving for the future, right? So I think we're achieving many, many more goals than the banks who are supposed to do this for you are really delivering. And again, it's not that Celsius is so great. It's that the banks are so bad at what they're supposed to be doing for you.
So, Alex, if the goal is to re-engineer the American and global financial system, what does that trajectory look like going forward? How do you think about that over a 1, 3, 5, 10-year time horizon?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I agree with all the commentary that you and your team are talking about every day, right? And I think you guys are doing an exceptional job educating the average Joe about the fact that this is not a normal recession. This is not a normal pandemic. This looks much more like 1932 than it looks like 2008. And I believe that the Fed printing more money in the last 10 years than it did since the dollar was created, right? More money was printed. Just this year, they printed 20% of all the dollars that ever existed. So that means that the inflation in dollar terms is 20%. Don't believe the CPI numbers, the Consumer Price Index. That means nothing, that your internet access went down. The question is, are the same dollars you're earning are worth more or less? And they are worth less. So I definitely agree with you guys that we're going to have very high inflation. I agree with you guys that there's going to be a debasement of the dollar. The problem is that because everybody's printing, all the other central banks are printing as well, we don't feel anything. It's it doesn't get hot hotter in the pot, like the fire is on, but we still don't think that the temperature is rising.
So well, we don't see it in goods and services. We see it in asset prices.
Right. We see that huge inflation in asset prices because where did all that money show up? It showed up in the stock market. It showed up in banks lending people on margin because they're not willing to issue a loan for you to open a restaurant. But if you want to buy 3 Tesla stock shares with your 1 share that you own, of course, they'll do that in a minute. So the inflation in assets is the opposite of what the Fed should be doing, right? The Fed should be funding the average Joe to restart their business. They should be funding innovation into blockchain and artificial intelligence and machine learning. But the problem is what the Fed did, and everybody thinks they did a great job. Let me describe it in kind of like a visual terms. The Fed put this giant net under the US economy. And the problem is the net has giant holes in it. And through those holes, all the small businesses fell to the bottom. And all the big businesses got caught and got bailed out. You were a big bank, you got bailed out. You were Boeing, you got bailed out. You were an airline, sure. How much money do you need, right? So, but if you were a restaurant, if you were a pizza shop, or if you were a hotel, a small hotel, you got nothing basically. So my point is that the economy is going to have to go through a restart, and we are having the second COVID wave, and we are in a slow motion depression, right? It hasn't hit us yet. Why? Because the Fed sprayed $3 trillion. The Fed and the monetary system, basically the government, sprayed $3 trillion on everybody. And what did we get out of that? Nothing. We just deferred the crash, basically the depression that we're going to have to go through. And you guys describe it better than anybody else, telling people again and again and again that all this debt is going to have to be refinanced. And I'm predicting that in the next 5 to 10 years, the Fed is going to have to bail out all the financial banks. And they may have to do it with a digital currency where they give you a new dollar, a digital dollar, in exchange for the balance you had with JP Morgan or the balance you had with Citi. And you now have a direct relationship with God. You don't need a messenger in the middle, right? Because basically they're going to rebase or remonetize the system, which is what we did with the green buck. We did that once again. We eliminated all the debt and gave everybody a fresh new dollar. So now we're just going to give you a digital dollar. And Europe is going to have to do the same thing with all the European banks. And obviously Japan has already been doing that. Basically, they bought 80% of all the equities and all the debt that the country has. So it doesn't end well. And it definitely doesn't end well for you, the average Joe, because your retirement plan is worthless, your savings are worthless, all that stuff is really, that's why you have to be non-correlated asset. You have to be in gold, Bitcoin, and the higher your allocation there, the higher the chances you're going to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Well, you've just said what we've been saying on Real Vision. We've reached a point where we've had the total overlap or integration of macro on the one hand and crypto on the other.
You guys should have 10 times as many subscribers. I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying, and you have a great following. And I think the more we spread the word, the more we're going to help people basically control their own future, right? Control their own destiny. Because again, Bitcoin is not connected in any way to the Fed. It's not connected in any way to the dollar. And one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. It just now takes $18,000 to get one, where it used to take $100 just 10 years ago.
Alex, that's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and keep doing what you're doing.
Hey there, since you got to the end, I'm guessing you like the
community from bad apples. And if we use regulation to keep the good apples in and the bad apples out, it's good for the community. So instead of looking at it as a how do we avoid the law, or how do we skirt the law, or how do we go offshore to not follow the law, we really need to take the good parts of the law and use them to make the community more powerful. After all, we started talking about it at the beginning of the interview, right? All we're doing is we're taking the power away from the banks and giving it back to the people. Because if you as an individual, you go to Citibank and you say, look, I look at your balance sheet and I know you're making 17% of my money, my salary that I just deposited with you. You turned around, you lend it to my neighbor, you charge them 24% on their credit card. I want 80% of that, right? You have zero chance of being successful as an individual going against the bank. But if I collected 1 million individuals and now I have $10 billion of assets, I have 100% success rate convincing the borrowers to pay us 15 or 17%. So this is a game of most people don't understand that they have the power. Just like AT&T thought they had the power, and all of us switched to VoIP and they realized they have no power. It's the same thing with the bank. Banks don't have any power. If all of us stopped depositing with them, they would disappear. They would have to sell all these beautiful buildings here in Manhattan and go and find a new business. Because today, they're not delivering any value to the depositors. They're delivering all their value to the shareholders.
Yeah. And like what happened with long distance carriers, the price model collapsed when it became commoditized.
Exactly. So it's the same thing here. It's the same thing with the bank. Banks don't have any power. If all of us stopped depositing with them, they would disappear. They would have to sell all these beautiful buildings here in Manhattan and go and find a new business. Because today, they're not delivering any value to the depositors. They're delivering all their value to the shareholders.
Yeah. And like what happened with long distance carriers, the